Show me why I should give you a free loan. So what are we talking about today, right? Crowdfunding hype. We're looking at Q4, the last part of 2024. Can you believe that is practically upon us? And usually Q4 in crowdfunding in the years past, when I've done like the roundups and the upcomings and all those things, like it's significantly down. Truth be told, December looking kind of lackluster though. October and November though, holy hype, Batman. Let's go. The question was not, is this video going to have awesome games in it? It was, what do you start with in a video like this? Where do you go when you're so excited about so many games, so many big games from so many big companies, from so many big IPs, pedigree-wise, across the board? Where do you go? And the truth is, you just pick one and you go, because I can't really do these in any specific ranking order because some of these are just so freaking awesome in my head as a whole. So let's just start there. Let's just start nearest, right? Unmatched, right? We're going to see Unmatched on both of these lists for Q4 at the retail side of things with The Witcher, and we're about to see literally what Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles has in store for us. I'm hoping we get more than the just generic Krang and Shredder. It seems like the low-hanging fruit in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I expect the 4 turtles, maybe a Splinter, Krang, the Brain with his little robot, plus or minus, and the Shredder, right? You got a little foot ninja mechanic thrown in there as well as little minions. Great, fantastic. Please show me something more than that, Restoration Games. At the time of me filming this, apparently we're embargoing it. It's one of those games where 0 is going to come out until like probably literally the week of launch. So I'm hoping that it's that case where you're just holding your cards really close to the vest and you want to surprise people a la sort of what we'll talk about here in a second. The Dice Throne, you know, all of a sudden Deadpool popping up. But that's sort of what I'm hoping for. There is such a huge Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles lore, comic book wise in the last couple years, show wise for the last, 30 years that you could draw off of. So please give me something creative there. Give me something, just reach into the pocketbooks, not even just the pocketbooks, reach into the depth of that lore and do something cool with it. Or, you know what, I'd also like to see Unmatched is based on the Star Wars epic duels in the first place. Man, go back to Star Wars. Give me some Legends canon from that in the Star Wars realm of things, right? Not the current, but like the Legends from all the books and the lore and the comic books from years past. I would literally throw money at the screen. And I mean that, metaphorically speaking, as well as literally, I would film myself throwing money at a screen so you guys could see it. Let's just stay on that though. The asymmetric ambiguity of Dice Throne. People beat and moaned and complained online and Facebooks when first they announced Marvel because I don't want Marvel. I want something unique. Well, now you're getting your wish because Dice Throne is going back to the uniqueness of seasons 1 and 2, which I'm freaking okay with. I don't care which it is. I just care that you're making freaking awesome, abilities and asymmetries and dynamic differences as a whole. Again, give me freaking wild, chaotic craziness. Give me just something off the chart, off the walls, a 4-star, 5-star difficulty, hell, even a 3-star difficulty that just does something absurdly different, breaks the rules, Deadpool style meta-esque, if you will, that is just out there, right? Don't play it safe. Don't play it safe. That is the biggest thing with both of these two campaigns I am fearing, is that it's going to be within the lines, everything you expect, nothing that you don't, slight price difference, huge deluxifications. That is my freaking concern with this, and why, again, I'm not sure they're going to be backed by me. Are they going to end up in my collection? Hell yeah. Am I going to back it on crowdfunding? No, I didn't back this on crowdfunding, right? I have a deluxe version. That's not the retail version. But the enticement nowadays from that aspect is lower and lower. The bar is not getting any higher, frankly speaking. You got to raise the roof, the bar in this case, to actually get my free loan. Show me why I should give you a free loan. That is the story of a lot of crowdfunding campaigns now, right? And purely deluxifications are not doing it. NPI just talked about the lacklusterness of Euros and the bling I feel like that's making up for the lacklusterness or appearing to do so on crowdfunding nowadays. I can't speak to that personally, But I've been saying that for, you know, a couple of weeks, months, or even a year or two on crowdfunding. Like, what's the difference between this euro exchange this resource to this resource to this resource to this resource to this resource than the other ones, right? So you might not like some of the ones that came out, but at least things like Wondrous Creatures or Yonder or those sort of ilk, Natera over here, that it's doing something different, right? I give kudos for that. Otherwise, we just end up with the, what is this one doing differently, safe style of things that I was just criticizing Dice Throne and Unmatched for. And you know what? Swing for the fences. Sometimes you're going to miss, sometimes you're going to knock it out of the park, though. And that's going to be the question sort of with the next one. Again, we're just staying with the rethemes, reimagines, re-expansions, I guess, is Roots with Homeland expansion with bats and frogs. Are these going to be better? 2 maps. I mean, I'd argue I don't need any more maps, but that's me. I would really kill for some factions that just really played well with 2. That were, you know, again, a little bit different and easier to get to the table, giving you the full dynamic. Now, again, that makes the argument that this game really isn't probably meant for a great 2-player experience in the first place. So I can't really argue that point too strongly without feeling the irony there as a whole. That being said, is it going to be a better entry point? That's the problem, or the blessing, curse in disguise, with expansions that come along this late. Past the second, but more like the 3rd or the 4th expansions for games nowadays, just, you know, like the other ones we were just talking about, is this the right point to step in? If you don't have any expansions, is this going to be the one that actually appeals to people? Is this going to be the recommended one over that? And again, that's a blessing because you're going to get a lot more new people in, but that's a curse because, again, a lot of your loyal fan base, customer base, whatever you say, consumer base, is going to look at it and go, well, I guess I really don't need this one. And you're always going to get the new people, but at the same time, you don't want to alienate your core base. I'm looking at you, Aeons End. We'll get to you later in this video, though. And that's my concern with this one as well. So we'll just stay with that theme, though, at the same time. And we'll go with Tanares. You know, Tanares Adventures is giving us more of an adventure swashbuckling in sea different dynamic than we even saw with Odalin. So they're going back to the original property, and we're going to see what Tanares can do because, again, Tanares was one that really stepped out and did a little bit more of the not a slog style campaign dungeon crawl scenario-esque, giving more variability, but they also went with the D20, which was a combination we really hadn't seen because I guess, you know, the pendulum had kind of swung all the way over to the Frosthaven, Gloomhaven side of things before Tanares came out, where people were saying, I don't like dice combat anymore. Gloomhaven is the best thing ever created under the sun in the century in the history of games because it doesn't use that. Well, you know what? Then they said, okay, well, we can incorporate a die rolling battle system, but not make it an actual slog of you need to mow everybody down. You need to be more intuitive and you need to be more ingenious in how you're going to be approaching this, because if you do that, you aren't going to win. And so now we're going to see what Dragori Games has in store for this. We've seen with Tanares, we've seen with Odalin, the massive miniatures that they can put out, the aesthetic that is right up there with, well, basically, you know, Awakened Realms. And that's not going to be the issue. It's going to be, dynamically speaking, what are going to be the differences? Is this going to be a Nemesis sort of situation where, well, the first one does this, the second one makes it more complex, and the third one revamps it as a whole in a different direction? Which one do I need? I don't have a freaking clue. Am I going to want, again, like, are you going to alienate your base, or are you going to appeal to them, or is it going to be a Cthulhu Death May Die, which was sitting here? It's now Nemesis. I don't know why I moved Cthulhu Death May Die. I'm weird like that. I still thought it was sitting there before filming this video. And that's the situation, right? Where I'm going, okay, I have Fear of the Unknown coming. Do I really need both Unspeakable boxes? Do I really need seasons 2, 3, and 4, and, you know, the GOAT and everything else along those lines? Or am I going to look at my previous Tanares adventure or anything along those lines and say, oh, see you later. Don't need you anymore. You know, previous expansion content are for games like Merchant's Cove, even, where the new ones come out and the old ones just don't get utilized from an asymmetric standpoint. So I don't know. Again, I know that those games aren't anywhere close to similar, but I think the point stands, whether it's the Root or the Tanares, where, you know, if it's mixed matchable, if it's either or, if it's a Nemesis situation, you're invariably going to find yourself loving one more than the other. So that'd be my biggest concern as a whole. Then we're going to go back, personally speaking, this one's high on my list. Sterling Games announced that we're going to have a sequel, standalone sequel, to Yomi. Paper, Scissors, Rock, Lizard, Spock but done in a BattleCon style way, where it's combo driven, simultaneous face down play, and then combo off of it based on how you paper, scissors, rock against your opponent, giving you more upgrades, more individual asymmetric options with gems, as well as multiple different fighters right out straight from the core box. The question is going to be in my head, how many in one box? I mean, the great thing about something like Summoner Wars, right, or the just generic BattleCon, is that you get a bunch of fighters in a core box for a low overhead, a low price point, right? An entry point, if you will. And the entry point for this one is probably going to be the biggest make it or break it, right? And like we saw with Puzzle Strike 2, which previously also was sitting behind me on that side, but I realize now I shelled it differently elsewhere, that wand was just not something I was, wanting to pay for after all, right? Like, it is fancy bling, deluxification on the table, but it's going to be a turnoff to people looking in, again, as an entry point. Why do I get it on crowdfunding? Because that's not something I feel like I need to miss out on aspect, right? The beauty of most of these games is that the mechanics need to be shining through, not the aesthetics. And so that's going to be the question on the make it or break it, even on a game like this, is it's a card-driven card battler, right? Card-driven card battling games do not win over their user base by bling deluxifications, right? If you really freaking love them, then afterwards you can go out and get your Marvel Champions, upgraded tokens and upgraded playmats and upgraded sleeves and upgraded whatever else you want, little 3D printed token holders, whatever it is, right? But you don't get that in the intro, at least if you're smart. Otherwise you end up selling collection with sleeved cards all over the place and trying to mark them up and think that people will actually pay for your markup for your sleeving because you're too lazy to also take them out of the sleeves. Mistake. So that'd be my big question with Yomi, because I love the asymmetry, I love the mechanics, but we'll see where it goes. Again, this one I'm actually less concerned mechanically speaking, because it's been on Steam for like the last year plus, playtesting, refining, and revamping. So I think this one, polished wise, is going to be very smooth already, even at the time of crowdfunding as a whole. So let's go back over to Chip Theory though, because we heard now that Cloudspire's finale is going to be coming. I mean, I'm sure that's going to be a big box, more factions, more map play, more one player asymmetric goodness. Now, again, my problem with this game is I looked at this game and when it came out and I said, I love the idea of this game. This chip battling skirmish style, 2 players on a map, asymmetric powers, factions, abilities, tech trees, upgrades, heroes sort of situation. And then I looked at the 1 player or even the 2 player cooperative and it was like, okay, well, it's not really a, kind of go as you go. It's more of a puzzle and you have to optimize, or you don't. And it reminded me of the City of Kings, where I looked at that game and I said, that game, in terms of all of those other key features of the upgrade, the tech tree, the asymmetry, was awesome, but it was more puzzle-like nature, and the difficulty escalation curve was just so steep that it was an immediate turnoff. And that's what Cloudspire ended up being for me, which is why I've never been enticed by it since. Is this going to entice me again? No, it's actually not. I actually have no incentive to do it unless it just turns into more of a pure skirmish. But the big barrier from that one is, of all these games that I've mentioned, this one has a huge learning curve to actually get in from a rules, errata, upgrade, minutia, how many icons are on the individual little chips standpoint. This is not an easy to play as you go sort of thing, right? This is a dedicated lifestyle game. And I'll compare it to the other one, their one that's concurrently running at the time of me filming this, Emberleaf. People were criticizing that for being over deluxified. And again, it's like you criticize that, but then Chip Theory gets a pass for that. And again, like, I'm not calling out one company over the other. I'm calling out consumers for being pure and utter hypocrites in that way. If one is overdone, they all are, folks. They all are. It's not just the one that you give the pass to because you like that company. They're all doing it. So they're all a little bit overpriced in that sense. It's which one you choose to support. Guess what I'm saying is, don't be that person in the comment section complaining about that when the other game that you're backing from the other company does the exact same thing, right? Right? Anyway, before I alienate all of my audience in the first place, we'll stay with the asymmetry. Let's go World Order from Hegemonic Games, the upcoming sequel, standalone, not even really sequel in the sense, but spiritual successor, if you want, sort of like a Blood Rage meets Ankh, Rising Sun situation with World Order from Hegemony. And so we're going to see slightly more streamlined, slightly easier to get to the table, asymmetry all over the board, which is what they were known for in the first place. if you can make it more playable, especially at a lower player count to give some of those same dynamics, that's what I'm looking for again, right? Like 4-player, great dynamic asymmetry games are cool, but it's the 2 and 3 player accessibility that I'm really hoping for. Not sure it's going to be there, but that's going to be the big question. And I think for a lot of people, again, that's the big criticism, right? Again, not as a criticism overtly in that sense against like the game itself, but as I can't get this played because I don't have the game group to play a 3-hour requiring 4-player asymmetric, know everybody else's factions, whether it's hegemony or whether it's root. And so if you can, not maybe totally cut off the corners, but smooth some of the corners on that statement to make it, okay, this plays really well at 3, and then you can change and adapt based on which ones you want to include which 3 factions of the however many factions there are, and still get a very nice balanced asymmetric situation with a little bit more political, economic, card-driven scheme of things. Yeah, okay, there is a spot for that, and that's why people are so intrigued by this, and we're so enamored with the idea of hegemony in the first place. And then Aeons End, we're going to go 2 for onesies here, because Aeon End is going to have some sort of campaign, I believe, before the end of the year. But we also saw from indie boarding cards as well very recently that Astronauts is being turfed. Haha. And you're going to see replacement here with Invincible, the deck building game. And it's going to be in the same line of things. And so that's the big question. Can an Invincible IP, basically rescue Astronauts? Because Astronauts never really got the acclaim, it never really got the push, it never really got the endorsement of the Aeons End crowd in the first place. And maybe that's the question, right? Is it the actual mechanic streamline difference? Is it the fact that Aeons End people were like, I don't need another Aeons End, slightly more streamlined? Because it's not as dramatic as the Nemesis people, right? Like, if we go back to that Nemesis comparison, it wasn't like everyone who had Nemesis was like, oh geez, here's another Nemesis, I don't need you, goodbye. It was more like that with Aeons End, where Aeons End people were like, at least in my opinion, like, I don't need Astronauts. I've already got too much Aeons End. And so maybe that's a card versus miniature driven aspect. Maybe that's a card versus FOMO driven aspect, where there's a lot less FOMO on the card side of things and a lot more FOMO on the miniature driven narrative campaign scenario, whatever else, adjective you want to use in that type of game in the Awakened Realms sense. Or maybe Awakened Realms is just better at creating the FOMO experience in that way. Although, I guess that'd be the question. If you got to a 5th or a 6th Nemesis game, would you stop buying them? That's an interesting proposal. I'd argue that some probably would, but I'd argue also that I guarantee you some would not. I guarantee you would have some people with 5 different Nemesis games. And that's what's happened with Aeon's End. But then if they came out with a Nemesis Lite style version, new Nemesis Streamlined from Awakened Realms platformer version of things, Awakened Realms Lite, would you buy that then to replace one of your other ones? I can't really compare it though, because again, I doubt you're going to see 6 Nemesis. Fast forward to 3 years from now when somebody is commenting in the comment section, I have all 6 Nemesis games, Chris. Then we're going back to Invincible here, because I don't know. I don't know if Invincible is that big of an IP. I don't know if this is a big coup, if this is a big grab, if this is a big enticement to people. We just saw Direwolf Digital do it with Invincible, the deck building game, from that aspect. And so I'm really surprised that you could have a turnaround IP grab situation in a card-driven aspect that closely, right? That close in terms of what the other one was, and that close in terms of time frame of release as well. We saw with Masters of the Universe, you see with the Star Wars projects all the time, where, okay, well, this is the Star Wars miniature game, this is the Star Wars card game, this is the Star Wars skirmish, and they've got the IP splitting of companies and locations in the world, like we saw with Masters of the Universe, where we only have the license for here, we only have the license for here. Looping back around, that's going to be the question with this, is what sort of grab is this? Is this going to be one that entices people? I have no idea. I'm very familiar with Invincible, the comic. I've been aware of the show, but I don't think it's anything like The Witcher or Monster Hunter, any of these huge video game IPs. I don't know if there's a huge overlapping Venn diagram between big comic book fans and card game fans, right? Miniatures, RPGs, video games, there's much bigger overlap there than there is with this. So we'll see when it crowdfunds. You'll see very quickly what the enticement is from that aspect. Then we have to go with another big one, Avalon Rivenvale, right? The Shadowborn Games follow-up to Oathsworn. going in a completely different direction. Arthurian legends, area control, again, asymmetry, powers, everything under the sun along those lines. Game-breaking abilities, roaming monsters, playtesting now for months at several conventions. And so we're going to have it be very shortly upcoming to see how big is this going to be. You know, Oathsworn is relatively, your personal experience may waver one way or the other, relatively well acclaimed overall on the boss battling side of things. You may have your preference of, you know, Townsfolk Tussle or Kingdom Death or Aeon Trespass, but a lot of people love Oathsworn as well. And so the question is this going to be the Oathsworn for boss battlers, Riven Veil for area control? It's got more of a Blood Rage Rising Sun type vibe to me off the top of my head. I don't know if that comparison is actually going to be apt in this situation. Again, cards very close to the vest. I would imagine you're not going to see stuff out until literally right before the campaign. I know they've been playtesting and doing NDAs from that side of things online. So there is information out there, but how widely, and I know the prototypes are out there as well. So it's just going to be a matter of, again, just like the ones at the beginning of this video, how soon close to the campaign are they going to be released to make you or to help you make decisions. But with a game this size as well, like I don't need it necessarily with Dice Throne. I don't need it necessarily with Unmatched because of the well unknown. Same thing with Root. Like I'd like it, but I don't need, what are we talking about here? The rule book. This is a game where I would argue that if you don't have a rule book, I would be very hesitant to back, right? And I'm saying that already because that's not a difference or a change or setting the bar higher with this game than others. But, you know, in the ones that I already have a good grasp of versus the ones that I need to know the nuances of, I look at it like a Grim Coven or a Dragon Eclipse, where what is going to make it or break it with this game is the nuanced differences in terms of some of the things that are not going to be obviously stated on any amount of gameplay content that gets released. Because there's going to be some of that overhead-wise, dynamic-wise, that just won't be able to be captured on a video format. And that's why a rule book on this one, above everything else I've talked so far in the video, is going to be absolutely and utterly necessary. Then, other big pedigrees. Revenant in the mini Voidfall universe, essentially, right? As we were talking, as Hegemony is to World Order, Voidfall is to Revenant, essentially from Mind Clash's standpoint. So it's going to be a little bit of a shorter, a little bit of a less complex Euro in the same universe. You're taking on the role of an admiral as your fleet is fleeing from the enemy, trying to defend it, though. This is going to be controversial a little bit, right? I wish they would have just done something a little bit more unconventional with this, right? Give me sort of a Great Wall Awakened Realms. Give me a cooperative, fleeing, tower defense-esque Euro. I think that would be truly innovative and amazing. Now, is there going to be a cooperative mode? I have no idea at the time of me filming this, right? I have no inside information. I just look at that and go, hearing the thematic description of it in the first place, think of the things that you could do. You're trying to flee, you're trying to fend, you're trying to have different fronts. Because you know, like when they talk about a battlefield, right? And they're engaging on multiple fronts, they have to send their reserves over to this part because they're going to get overwhelmed over here. Or they have to, you know, bolster over here and send, you know, like those are the dynamics that I could see. And if you Euro optimized it, whatever that means, I guess, right? That would be a very intriguing premise. Now, I guess my other concern is with Mind Clash, if you're going to call it a little bit lighter, not light, show me. Because light from Mind Clash and light, those are not two of the same things. That's going to be the other issue, just like with World Order, very similar in that sense, is it going to actually be more accessible for those that thought Voidfall was too much? Again, Hegemony, Voidfall, no one is saying bad games, right? But there is a saturation of overhead and rules that will limit people like myself from being able to fully enjoying and optimizing it from that standpoint, right? I am time constrained, rules constrained, remembering constrained. I'm a lot of other ways constrained too, but that's not for this video. But that's going to be my main question. And with Voidfall, I'm imagining just like with Cloudspire, maybe slight price point and overall deluxification being the reason for crowdfunding. Show me more though. Show me more and we'll see. Then we're going to end things on a much more Amerithrash note. We're going Sublime Dark from All or Nothing. Now, you may know All or Nothing from their other series, like the Killforths, right? The more recently arriving to backers, Creel Manor, Veilwrath, those games. More solo style games, 1 to 2 player-esque dice-driven card management style games. And this is Sublime Dark, uncovering the secrets of this town in a cooperative storytelling horror game. And well, that's about all we know at this point. How different is it going to be? How narrative is this going to be? Like, storytelling is one thing, but that's the tricky balance. When I hear that, I also worry that it's going to be more text than it is action mechanics. And that's going to be the balance in this game that I feel like is going to be the big conundrum. With All or Nothing, you also know that it's not going to hit wide retail, so price is going to be the big consideration. You are going to get a little bit of extra. But how different than those other properties that I just mentioned as primarily solo-driven games, even though they have cooperative elements to all of them, is it going to be? Because I'd make the argument that it reminds me, again, not in a bad way, but, you know, when I think of cooperative, I think of mainly playing it in my house at 3 and 4 players. When I think of Killforth, when I think of Too Many Bones along those lines, Mage Knights, I think of those as 1-player games, maybe 2-player games. Again, not as a bad thing, but as when I want a cooperative game, I think 3 and 4. I think The Loop. I think something along those lines with my Pandemic Iberias. I hate the fact that they took out Pandemic in that sense. Anyway, when are we getting a new Pandemic iteration? Are we getting those yearly anymore? I don't think we are, but we need a new one, thematically wise. Star Wars Clone Wars just didn't cut it. So that's where I'm going to question with Sublime Dark. Balancing the storytelling and the immersion mechanics, as well as the mitigation, how Amerithrash, how random, how chaotic, Killforth or not. Then last up, Thunderworks here. We're talking Citizens of the Spark. Gives me sort of Dale of Merchants meets nature vibe, if you will. Currently crowdfunding from North Star Games. And it gives me that because it's a variable card setup, like with Dale of Merchants, when you choose several of the animals to do your reverse deck building. Only in this case, you're going to be choosing 7 to 10 different animal types of the 30 plus available. Share them all into one deck, distinct asymmetric powers, and create your own action combos by recruiting them. This is a wide comparison on the Board Game Geek page, and it's probably just casting nets, essentially, if you will. It's for fans of games like Dominion, Smash Up, Everdell, and Wingspan. Endless clever card combos. Anthropomorphic, because otherwise, if I don't say it slowly, it takes me 4 takes to say. No downtime between turns. You select a card, activate it, take the effect, discard it, and everyone else, though, can follow. And that's going to be activating their own unique citizen. So how you choose to combo it, in what order, how long is it going to be? And again, from Thunderworks, what's going to be the incentive? We've seen mini expansion content galore from their previous campaigns. So I'd imagine, again, something along those lines. But it hits a little bit of a sweet spot for me. So there you go. Q4 in a nutshell that we know of right now. I'm sure there's plenty of other big ones that we haven't seen or that we won't know until they actually launch and get a couple $100,000 and surprise us. But in case you want to hear about those as they come up, that's why you should subscribe to me, because I do a weekly crowdfunding roundup running down all of the weekly projects that get launched every single frickin', well, close to week. So yeah, that's like almost 50 videos a year talking about that. Talking about probably over 1,000 games. Well, 1,000 games? Maybe not 1,000 games. Probably like several hundred. Upwards of maybe 700 by the end of the year. I'm going to actually figure that out at the end of the year on like the last couple videos in December, and I'm going to put that out and say this is how many rules and games I talked about on crowdfunding this year, just to see how many it is, because I don't think people really realize how much that is. Like, tons of games. It's not always just the big ones like you see on this video. I cover them all, pretty much. Asterisks. That's all I got. I'm done rambling. It's over. Peace out. Stay class. Have a great freaking day, and let me know which ones I didn't talk about that you're interested in as well. And I'll be talking about this separately, either slightly before or slightly after this, about the retail of Q4 as well, because big names, big knockers all over the place. That didn't come out right. Big names, big game players all over the place. We're going to leave that in there for posterity's sake, I think. You can tell I've been filming for way too long at this point. Peace out.